Hello. In this video I'm going to demonstrate how to create a cool, shaded, sheltered, damp garden in a small space. I'm going to share with you some design ideas and my plant selections. I'm located on a small circular patio which I laid a week ago, and if you want to know how to lay a patio, I've done a video on it and I'll put a link to that at the end of this video and in the description box below this one. Yesterday I planted all my tree ferns into the ground, and if you want to see more videos on tree ferns, there are several in a playlist on my channel, and I'll put a link to that at the end of this one and again in the description box below. And that includes my video, A Complete Guide to Tree Ferns and Tree Ferns Winter Protection. So this video will not be about tree ferns, but if you want to know more about tree ferns, have a look at the playlist on my channel. In this video, I'm going to plant out all these plants and explain to you why I've chosen them. And I'm going to intersperse that with some of my design thoughts on gardening in a small space. Now, if you're a regular visitor to my channel, you will already know that this small area is at the rear of my cottage and it's north facing. It's surrounded on the one side by the cottage and on two other sides by extensions to the cottage. The sun comes up over there, it goes overhead and sets behind me, which means that for most of the day it's in the shade. Also, because my house is thatched and there are no gutters to catch the rainwater, the rain just runs off and soaks into the earth, which means that this area is pretty much constantly cool and damp. And that means that it's the ideal location for all these shade-loving plants like the tree ferns and the hostas and several other ferns that I've laid out before me. Now, the first small space design tip that I would share with you is that a large plant in a small space really does have huge impact. I think people tend to shy away from putting large plants into a small space because they're worried that it might dominate the space. But it has the opposite effect. It does have a huge amount of impact. That's why we've gone with these tree ferns, and I've got 7 of these tree ferns, ranging from a 1-foot specimen down there to a 7-foot specimen to my left. And I acknowledge that they are quite expensive plants. But here's another tip for you. You can get a very similar effect as this by erecting a tree trunk, hollowing out the top and planting into it something like a shuttlecock fern, and that will have a very similar effect to a tree fern. Eventually that will grow to 1 metre tall. You'd have to keep it watered though. Other plants which will eventually grow large and become quite nice specimens might be things like a Trachycarpus Fortunei if you want to go for a more Mediterranean effect. Now, this small space is tucked away at the rear of my cottage. It's secret and it's almost hidden. So I'm going to create a small windy path into and out of the space to create that sense of journey and mystery. And I've already lined that path with 3 vertical tree ferns which will produce fronds at the top, meeting in the middle, and that will create a doorway into this hidden, mysterious world. So that's another design tip. If you can, create a gap, a doorway, something to travel through, which gives you that sense of mystery. Now, these tree ferns are very slow growing. They will only grow vertically 1 foot in a decade at the very most in the UK, but some of these plants are quite different to that. For example, the shuttlecock fern here, quite a small plant at the moment, but that's got the potential under the right circumstances to become 1 metre tall. So when you're designing your shady space and you're underplanting, be careful. Always think about the plant's ultimate height. That is going to need headroom. There's no point me planting that underneath the low fronds of this tree fern because it's just going to clash. So I will put that and anything else that's going to grow tall in a space where it's got headroom to grow. If you have restricted room, it's worth thinking about something like this plant here, which is called Mind Your Own Business. And that little plant there will creep out sideways, it won't grow up vertically, and create a lawn of lush green tiny leaves. So that's a great plant to put underneath opening doors. It's also a great plant for ground cover in between and underneath your other ferns. Furthermore, plant that between stepping stones, and it will create a carpet around the stepping stones and make them pop, and it will give you a sense of adventure as you traverse along the stepping stones. So that's mind your own business. I've got 20 of them here, and you can see the carpet effect it creates. They will be planted all around this patio, and eventually I'll look out and see a sea of green. Hostas are well known as being shade-loving plants, but they're also well known to being very attractive to slugs and snails. And you can come out in the morning and find all your lovely leaves eaten away. There are 2 hostas here which are supposedly resistant to slugs and snails. Immediately in front of me, these 2, Hosta Jurassic Park, and over here to my left, Hosta Empress Woo. And they are supposed to be resistant to slugs and snails. But the other thing about those 2 hostas is that they are giant hostas. So beware, because they will not stay small. That's another plant that you need to think about its ultimate height. Another thing you have to be aware of with all these plants, as well as their height, is their spread horizontally. You have to do that thing which I describe as rolling the tape forward. Plan, in fact, how all these plants will be in 2 or 3 years when they've become established, found their feet, and reached their full potential. Some plants can be monsters, and you don't want them to completely take over your outside space. Now, case in point, I've put some bamboos at the back just to act as a backdrop, but I've not planted them into the ground because they're very invasive. I've put them in pots. And that allows me to control their spread and scope. So there's another little design tip. Always look forwards in time to understand how the garden will look in the future. Don't be lulled into a false sense of security by a relatively small plant, which could eventually become huge and stop you even from opening your door. Another lovely plant for a cool, shady, moist area is this one, the arum lily, and this produces lovely white flowers. They are particularly nice in the evening because they catch the last rays of light. You could even plant them in a bog garden, and I've got 3 of those, which is another tip actually. Try and plant plants in groups of 3 or odd numbers. For some reason, aesthetically, plants don't ever seem to look as good when they're in even numbers unless you're going for symmetry. So, odd numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7, and so on. So, I've talked about my tree ferns. I've talked about the different types of hostas, including these giant varieties which are resistant to slugs. I've talked about the arum lilies. Here are several different types of fern which you can buy in selection packs actually. That one there is a hartstongue fern, which I bought from Facebook Marketplace. I got 2 very large plants for £5. So shop around, look at Facebook Marketplace. And I've talked about ground cover, and I think the ideal plant for ground cover in a shady area is this beautiful little mind your own business, which creates a carpet of green. Now at some point, I'm going to have to get all these wonderful plants into the ground, in and amongst and underneath these tree ferns. So here's another little tip. Don't just look at it close up. Take a step back. Go away from the garden from various different vantage points and have a look. See where there are gaps from a distance as well as gaps from close up. Yesterday, I placed all these plants around here. Then I went away and I looked back and I could see a great big area that was void of any plants. One of the wonderful things about these tree ferns, if you buy different heights, is you get to see a different aspect. And this is a beautiful plant from above, which is why I've bought this small one here, which from a standing position I can look down into and see the beautiful fronds unfurling. And that way, eventually, by trial and error, you'll find the perfect plan for you, for your garden. And as I've already said, don't forget to take into account the plant's ultimate size and shape. Now I think I've said enough. I'm going to lay these all out now and get them planted in the ground. I'll probably give you that in fast forward, and I'll come back in about 30 seconds for a summary. I'll see you then. So there you go. My small, cool, shady, mysterious, hidden fern garden is all planted up. I've complemented my collection of tree ferns with several other varieties of ferns. Lots of different hostas which love damp, moist conditions, including the two giant varieties, Empress and Jurassic Park, which are also slug and snail resistant. I've added some arum lilies and some hart's tongue ferns, and of course the mind your own business, which will create a lovely green carpet in between all the other plants. I've retained those because I'm going to put them in between the stepping stones on the path which I'm about to create. And of course, I benefit from lots of little pots for lavender and rosemary cuttings. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's been entertaining and informative. If you have, please do hit the like button. And of course, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to comment below, because it's always lovely to hear from you. What's your experience of small space gardening or cool shady gardening? Let me know below. And I'll see you soon.